Alright guys, let's talk about promise. Alright, so we've spoken about the callback function, and we've been talking about the promise as well, but it seems we are not getting it. I think because of the network interruption and all of that, our conversation is not smooth. So I have to do this. Because this is a very, very, very important topic as far as JavaScript is concerned. So what we're talking about is, we said JavaScript is is synchronous in nature. What that means is it's single threaded. In other words, only one action, only one task can happen at a time. So if, for instance, your logic requires that certain things go to server to get a remote server to get data from a remote server, things happen, network speed and a lot of things happen, and then the request is delayed. So what that means is that during that time of request, nothing else happens, everything is frozen. You can't even do anything, and then even tasks that do not even depend on what is coming from the server. So it's important that we know how to handle stuff asynchronously, such that the events are not blocked. Because when things are run the way JavaScript actually run, we have blocking. So when we say blocking, it means that one task is currently going on, every other task have to queue, and then execute like that. So but the concept of asynchronous is talking about, okay, if we can execute stacks in parallel, we can have side by side, one is going on, another one is going on simultaneously, so both of them can run in parallel, and that is the concept of parallelism. This is very, very simple. It's nothing difficult than what we've been doing, so you have to just calm down, bring your mind down. Promise is just normal, there's nothing difficult about it. It's what we've been doing. So let me just explain it even more. Probably, I hope this helps anyway. So let me call it. So you can see that we've got promise. We've done about 2 examples, but still people still didn't get it. So let me say I call it promise explained .html. So promise explained.html. Okay, so let's say I have this, I call this promise. Alright, so now say we have, let me write it this way, scripts. Now a bit of explanation just to reiterate what I've discussed in the class. A couple of us didn't get it. Promise has 3 states. Promise means what it means, that I promise you something. So when I promise you something, it means I'm going to give you something in future. Alright, so I'm not giving you now. So the moment I make the promise, the states becomes pending. It means you're expecting it. Now when the time comes for me to fulfill my promise, there are 2 things that can happen. I can either fulfill my promise or disappoint. So when I fulfill my promise, it means the request is successful. Then when I disappoint you, it means otherwise, it means there's a failure. All right, so these are 3 states of a promise. So we have 3 states of a promise. Let me write it in the comments. So we have something like this. We have statuses, call it states. One is pending, the second is fulfilled, and the third is rejected. So this is the moment the promise is made. This is when the promise is fulfilled, that is when it's successful, and then when it fails, that is when it is rejected. So these are what we're going to be battling with: pending, fulfilled, rejected. Alright, so let's see the syntax of a promise itself. So the syntax is very, very simple. Very, very simple. So is as simple as saying, let's say let promise be equals to new promise. It's as simple as this. It's as simple as this. Promise equals to new promise, just like you instantiate any object or any class like that. Alright, now but this takes two functional arguments, something like this. So let's say you're writing it like this function. So you have resolve and reject. Okay, resolve and reject. So this is when when stuff are resolved, so which means successful promise. That's when you have resolved. And then a failure, this is when you have when it's failed. Then you have rejected. Alright, so these are two functional arguments that you pass. So whether you write it like this or you write it as arrow function is your choice. Let's say you write it like this: promise equals to new promise, the same way. And instead of writing as declarative function, you have it as arrow function. You have resolve, and then you have reject, and then you have it like this. I'm quite sure that you guys know that they are the same, because we've done function and you guys are quite good in writing functions. So this is a very simple syntax of writing a promise. For every function there is a point where you declare a function and a point where you call it. So this is the syntax for declaring a promise function. Okay, so you have something like this. So this is declaration, this is declaration. Then we are going to see how you can call a promise function later on, but let's take it one after the other. So this is a very simple way of declaring your promise. Alright, so I'm still going to stick to one. There's no point writing it as two. Let's say I'm sticking to either of them, either this or that. So let's say I'm sticking to the second one, this second approach here. Now we said let promise be equals to new promise, resolve, reject. Now let me see what this promise is. Let's see what the value of this promise is. Console.log, and then I have this promise passed. So if I save that and then live reload, now if you check the console for what we've done, we'll see that we have promise, and then we're having we have promise states, and then we have promise results. So promise state at this point is pending, because what we did was just to create the function without passing any value to it, without resolving or rejecting it. Alright, so what we have is the state is pending, and then the promise result at this point is undefined. At this point, this promise is actually undefined. It doesn't have any value yet. It's the point of expecting. It's something like it's pregnant, it's expecting. Alright, now if we go ahead and pass value to it, let's just say I say resolve, and then I put Tide Lab, for instance. Alright, at this point this promise now has a value, and its value is the resolved value. So this is what we're saying, this fulfill value here. So let's run that and let's see. Now you can see that the promise has changed from being pending to down fulfilled, and the promise result is what is Tide Lab. So in other words, what we are saying is the resolved could be as simple as a string, just this simple string like this, or can be as complex as it can ever be. So whatever it is that you resolve will be the value of that promise. Whatever it is that you resolve will be the value of that promise. Okay, so let's say instead of resolving now, I'm rejecting instead. So I say reject. I'm rejecting instead, and what I'm rejecting is, I said oops, page not found. Just a simple error like that. So instead of resolving, I'm rejecting. So let's see what the status would be. You can see the status of this promise. The promise state is now rejected, and the promise result is oops, page not found. So now what does resolve mean and what does reject mean? So when you say resolve, it means, this is a successful value, and reject is the failure value. So things will always have two, request will always have two results. Is either it's successful or it's failed. All right, just like I said, that when I promise you, I can either fulfill my promise or disappoint you. So this is where, in the case where I fulfill my promise, and then this is the case where I get you disappointed. All right, so in other words, in either case, I have to give a feedback, to you, that you're expecting something from me, and I gave you a promise. All right, so the feedback can be what you're expecting, or could be something that you're not expecting, and this is where resolve and reject comes in. All right, now, so let's see. I hope that is simple enough. Now let's see how we can call it. How you can call the function. For every function, you declare them and then you call them. Now, a promise function, and please, you need to know that this doesn't have to be promised though. I'm quite sure that you guys know that this could be anything. This is just a variable name. I could name it anything. This could have been a variable. And when I log it, so let's say I comment out this reject. When I log it, I will still get the same results. Console log, if I log this, I'm still going to get the same results as what I've been getting. So of course, just to be sure, because I know a number of us might still be getting it twisted. Now this is how you declare a function, a promise function, and then how do you then call it? Okay, now let's say I'm sticking to this a variable instead of a promise. I would call it like this: dot then. Okay, so you can have it called like this: function response. Okay, like this. Promise dot then, that is, you make a promise, then after, then you give a feedback. Now if the feedback is successful, you're going to have it in the then callback, something like this. So you have this dot then. So this response here would represent whatever it is that you resolve here. That is what this response represents. Let's see it in action. Let's say I say console.log or alerts response. Let me say I alert the response. So if you look at it, you see what we're seeing here is tied lab, and that is what we resolve. So whatever it is that we resolve, is what gets seen in the response. So what it means is that when you use this dot then, this automatically represents whatever value or variable, whatever it is that you're resolving here. That's what you get from here. So you can do whatever it is that you want to do with that response. Okay, you can do whatever it is that you want to do with that response. Okay, all right, so that is resolve. And then what if it was rejected? What if it was rejected? Let's say that I have this rejected, like this. How do I give the feedback? So this is rejected, and we can see that when you say you have rejected, nothing happened. Nothing happened because you are not giving a feedback. You say reject, oops, page not found. But the feedback, this reject does not get passed within the then callback, but rather it got passed because it's an error. It's seen as an error within the catch. Okay, so you write it within the catch function error. Also, you need to know that it doesn't have to be response, or it doesn't have to be error. Whatever it is that you pass here, any variable that you pass here automatically represents what is being resolved. And then anything that you pass here automatically represents, what is being rejected. So if you do this, okay, and you do an alert of error, you then see the error hop here, oops, page not found. So rejects, can be fed back to the user through what? Through the catch, and then resolved will be through the then. So it doesn't mean that you can also do several other things within the catch, you can do several other things within the then. This shows that request is completed, then you can continue to do, you can do any other thing. So whether you are manipulating the response or you are continuing with some pending task that you want to do upon the completion of the first task, this is how you call that function. Pretty much the same way you could have written this as arrow function as well. I don't have to tell you that. Let's say you want to write the same thing as arrow function, so you see that a lot of people have something like this. If you're writing this as arrow function, I don't have to write it for you because we've passed this stage, we've gone past the stage, so you can have something like this. So this is the same thing. This one and this ones are pretty much the same thing. So this one is just written in arrow, and this one is declarative function. So however you want to do it, you want to stick to a style that you feel works for you. Okay, now this is a very simple way of declaring a promise and calling the promise. So take for instance, let's say I want to handle the two in the same, so I say if, let me delete one of them. Let me be consistent since I wrote this as arrow function. So let me say if 5, just something that doesn't really, if 5 is greater than 4, which is obvious. If 5 is greater than 4, resolve, else reject. It's just a simple illustration of, okay, yeah, you set a condition, so if that condition is met, you are resolving, and if the condition is not met, then you are rejecting. Just a simple example, nothing that makes sense. So you can see that Tylab is resolved, but then if I change it otherwise, I will see that the condition would not be met, and then it will be rejected instead, and what I will get will be the error. So what I get instead will be the error, oops, page not found. So please just take 2 minutes of your time or 1 minute of your time to look at it. Simple declaration, let variable be equals to new promise, then you pass two arguments, resolve, reject. Resolve is when it's successful, and reject is whatever it is that you want to say when the request is not successful. This will be the feedback the user gets, the guy that is expecting that you promise something. So this is the feedback that he gets. He either gets what he was promised, or he gets disappointed with this rejected value here. Alright, so and this is how you then call it, then and then catch, like that. And then of course we call it out finally, like you do a cleanup the same way we did when we're having the error handling. So for the sake of the size of the video, I'm going to stop here and then use another video to illustrate an example. I just hope this helps us. I just hope it helps us.